High-level standardized listening tests are exercises in active auditory data processing, requiring a listener to extract a highly specific signal from a wall of ambient noise. The standard 40-minute audio track operates on a precise timeline, divided into 4 escalating sections. The design forces a progression in cognitive load. It begins with basic transactional data retrieval, like booking a holiday room, and scales up to the synthesis of complex academic concepts. To guide the listener through this progression, test designers rely on a rigid architecture. They utilize predictable linguistic markers to flag target data precisely when it appears. Simultaneously, they engineer distractor patterns around those markers, creating conversational camouflage that easily trips up an untrained ear. By isolating these markers within the raw transcripts, we can map out exactly how the test directs attention. Scoring highly, therefore, depends on recognizing these structural linguistic shifts as they happen. The exam evaluates structural logic alongside vocabulary. Section 1 establishes the baseline. The format is a straightforward back-and-forth dialogue focused on transactional exchanges, like 2 people arranging a holiday rental. One of the core mechanics here is the spelling protocol. The test demands an exact letter-by-letter transcription of a specific proper noun. Here in the transcript for question 1, the dialogue drops an explicit spelling prompt to deliver the answer: MOONFLEET. The data is raw and highly visible. Once the baseline is established, designers introduce distractor insertion to complicate basic informational questions. Moving down the page to question 3, the prompt asks the listener to identify a negative aspect of a rental property. The speaker uses the noun shops, inserting it as a trap for anyone listening exclusively for key words without grasping the context. This functions as a contextual distractor. The vocabulary is simple, but the actual target data is embedded in the modifier. Section 1 requires filtering out these basic nouns and focusing on the specific modifiers that directly answer the condition of the prompt. Section 2 increases the cognitive load by eliminating the back-and-forth dialogue. The listener must now track an unbroken informational monologue. The targeted data also shifts. We move from raw facts to causal justifications, identifying the specific reasons why a rule or situation exists. This section of the transcript, corresponding to question 15, outlines the enforcement of a strict 11 p.m. bedtime rule at a study center. Instead of dropping the answer immediately, the speaker deploys a specific linguistic signal phrase, and there's a good reason for this. That phrase alerts the listener that the justification is arriving. The target answer directly follows the signal. Designers also use Section 2 to introduce conditional distractors. Looking at this next passage for question 20, the speaker addresses towel requirements. They construct an if-then conditional maze. One path says, if you're happy, don't bring another. The immediate contrast follows. If not, take one of your own. Section 2 evaluates the ability to maintain focus through continuous speech by tracking these precise causal links and navigating conditional if-then paths. Section 3 returns to a multi-speaker format, but elevates the content to highly technical or academic classification. The core challenge here is navigating a classification matrix. The listener has to correctly match specific features to distinct categories, in this case, different types of bank accounts. This transcript block outlines the features of the student account. To find the correct answer for question 22, the listener must navigate a negative constraint mechanic. The identifying feature for this account appears as a negative qualifier amidst a list of positive benefits. You don't pay any interest on overdrafts. Transitioning to the MoneyMinder account for question 23, the text introduces a more complex signal, the contrastive conjunction sequence. The word but is weaponized to pivot the listener away from the distractor, not getting a checkbook, and point directly toward the target data, getting a debit card. Section 3 forces listeners to actively map these verbal constraints and structural contrasts to properly categorize a dense flow of information. Section 4 represents the peak of cognitive load, an unbroken, dense academic presentation. The objective abandons basic data retrieval. The listener must track abstract concepts and complex methodological steps in real time. This transcript portion for question 32 shows the speaker outlining the conceptual origin of their research methodology. The crucial data point is preceded by an explicit academic signal phrase. The idea for this research project came from a very specific source, immediately followed by the target answer. Moving further down the page to question 37, the speaker utilizes procedural tracking to explain simultaneous actions in an experiment. First, the speaker establishes the primary recording method, having participants talk into a tape recorder. Then, a simultaneous conjunction is deployed. Whilst they were doing this, introduces the secondary, targeted data point overlapping with the first action. Section 4 demands chronological mapping. The listener must filter through heavy abstract terminology to locate specific procedurally linked data points. Achieving a high band score requires dynamically shifting your listening strategy as the test architecture changes. Sections 1 and 2 rely on discrete entity extraction, requiring you to map spelling protocols and listen for explicit causal signals and conditions. Sections 3 and 4 elevate the challenge, forcing you to map contrastive conjunctions and track chronological markers through dense academic discourse. Top performance comes from recognizing these embedded structural signals as they are spoken, rather than attempting to translate every vocabulary word. The conversational noise is designed to distract, but the underlying linguistic signals are mechanically rigid and predictable. This specialized analytical breakdown was provided by our sponsor. This video is brought to you by the IELTS FOCUS Zalo 0847705973, an English center specializing in IELTS preparation.